Greetings and good tidings, you good people. Welcome to Stone by Stone, an Edgewater Castle podcast, where we peel back the layers of the beautiful game like the 32-paneled onion that it is. Join me, Andrew Swanson, your host, as we engage in some insightful conversations with some very remarkable individuals. These brave souls will share their unique perspectives on the world and its game, their personal narratives, and how football has woven itself into the fabric of their lives like the thread in a highly personalized quilt. A heartfelt thank you to our production sponsors, Tightrope Recording, for their masterful sound engineering, and to our dedicated listeners. Your continued support means the absolute world to us, so thank you for it. Now, hear ye, gather round the hearth, pour something literally or figuratively warm into your cups, and welcome to Stone by Stone. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Stone by Stone. I'm your host, Andrew Swanson, and I am joined here by my dear friend, Paul Cadwell. Paul, welcome.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. It's a pleasure to see you, as always. Today's episode is a new experience for us. You may notice that we're not in our normal environs here. This is actually our office. So believe it or not, Edgewater Castle FC signed a lease. We have our own office. It's enormous. It's positively cavernous that way. No, we love it. It's just the right size for us. But we're doing our episode today in the office. So we've had, as Paul has seen, a few technical difficulties getting ourselves ready for this one, but we made it. We're here, and I'm just so glad to have this conversation with you, Paul.
Looking forward to it.
So, Paul, we've known each other for a few years. We met, obviously, through the soccer circles in Chicago. Before we delve into your past and your history in general and in the game, why don't you tell the folks what your role is now and a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, Paul Cadwell, born in Northern England, raised in Northern England, came to the United States in 1997 to coach soccer, and somehow ended up with the Chicago Fire back in the club's inaugural season in 1998. I managed to stay there for 27 seasons now. And my current role is Senior Vice President of Community Programs, Engagement, and Facilities, which is a lot of words for saying I do stuff for the club.
Yeah. It's a lot of words. I mean, you maybe put a little hyperbole into the smallness of your perspective there, but yeah, we'll get into your exact job and all the different things you do, which are many. And I'd like to learn a little bit more about your experience with the Fire early days, and what your role was back then, sort of how you grew through the club as it grew. But I want to start also at the beginning because I don't know a lot about you.
Yeah.
And in terms of prior to your experience professionally. So Paul, you grew up in Northern England. Tell me a little bit about your upbringing there, and how that had an impact on you, obviously as a kid, and then moving through your life. Tell us a little bit about your life as a kid.
Yeah, grew up in the very north of England, place called Cumbria, right on the border with Scotland. Grew up into a football family. My dad was a huge Manchester United fan. Back in those days, there was football, cricket, and rugby for you to do as a youth. I was lucky enough to play all three. But my life was centered around football from the earliest age. I could walk. My dad was a very good, prominent local footballer. My great-grandfather was a professional footballer for Preston North End.
Oh, wow.
And so I just grew up in an environment where from the age of, from you could walk, you kicked a ball, you played with a ball. So that was my upbringing, and as much as I remember my youth, it was always centered around playing sports of some form or another.
Mm-hmm. Did you, as a kid, did you also play the other sports? Did every kid kind of play everything, or was there...
Yeah, you kind of did play everything. I was lucky enough to be good at soccer, or football, and rugby. See, I've been here too long now. I'm going straight to soccer.
Yeah.
I mean, I played representative honours at rugby, played for my county, played for the north of England.
Oh, wow.
And football, I went all the way through to play for England schoolboys. So most people played at least football and rugby. And then some also played cricket too, which obviously is a summer sport. So,
yeah. Interesting. So when you were growing up there, did you grow up there through elementary and high school? Were you there all the way sort of up through that period of time?
Yeah, all the way through 16 years of age. I lived in the same town. So very small town. Everyone knows each other. All the families know each other. Everybody knows the ins and outs of everything you do, good and bad.
Sure.
But it was a great upbringing. Lots of friends that I'm still in touch with today. So yeah, very lucky to have the upbringing that I did.
And you've obviously, you grew up in sports in England, and obviously being very close to Scotland, you probably had some idea of what was, maybe different about English football, Scottish football, etc. You've also spent a long time in the youth soccer system in the US.
Yeah.
So how did the English youth soccer system, as you knew it then, compare to the current system in England, and then also the system here in the US, I guess?
It's a lot different today back in England than it was when I was growing up, but it's still very similar in that most kids just play, whether it's on the park, in the streets. It's still. I go back today. I've got young nephews, young nieces, and kids are out playing everywhere on the parks. There is no fees to play, so I think we used to pay 50 pence a week for somebody's mum to watch the kit, and that's about as much as pay to play football that you saw. So when I came to the United States, it was a huge shock when I came here to find out that everything was super organized, super regimented, and there's a lot of money that you could be charging to play youth soccer in America.
Yeah. Were there any particularly memorable matches or tournaments from your youth that you sort of like still remember and still stand out to you as either triumphant or tragic, or just some really big memory that you have as a young athlete in England?
Yeah, I would say the first one was I played for the north of England against the south of England at a stadium called the Valley Parade, which was in Bradford, and unfortunately it was famous for actually burning down. There was a huge tragedy there that killed over 40 people.
There's a city I know quite a lot like that. It has a famous fire to be called back to. Anyway, continue on.
Yeah, so I was playing against the south of England, and I had an especially good game. Scored a couple of goals, had an assist. The day after I played in that game, I think of the 18 Division 1 clubs, which it was then, Premier League clubs, 18 out of 20 clubs called me up and asked to go for a trial, and some even just offered me a contract based on that one game from that evening. So that was a game where you knew there was a lot of scouts in the stands, but I don't think I realized the impact of that game until the next day when my phone was just blowing off the hook back in the north.
Yeah, so what was, talk to me about how that transpired. What went down after that in terms of that game and those calls and all that?
I'd had a couple of clubs reach out and want me to go and try out for them or have trials prior to that game, but mostly clubs in the north, Middlesbrough, Sunderland, Celtic, being three of probably the most prominent clubs. After that game, every club in Division 1 reached out apart from Arsenal, and to my chagrin, Manchester United.
Oh, that's gotta kill. That's just the worst.
So
how dare they?
Yeah,
didn't they know? Well, anyway, so did you end up going to any trials or no?
Yeah, I went to Middlesbrough, which was just down the road. Then we went down to Aston Villa. Aston Villa at the time were pushing for a championship. They were managed by Graham Taylor, the former manager of England.
Right.
And
player for England also, right?
No, I don't think Graham Taylor ever played for England.
I'm thinking of a different Graham.
Yeah, you might be. No, Taylor was definitely just a manager.
Okay.
And they overwhelmed me and my dad. Graham Taylor was there to meet me at the gates. When we turned up, we were given royalty treatment, taken around the ground, and offered what was then called a 2-year schoolboy professional form. So you sign forms as long as your school agrees, and that tied me to the club for the first 2 years. They also offered me what was a 1-year YTS, youth training scheme, to the true value of £27.50 a week. So to leave school and play for Aston Villa then. So went down there, enjoyed my time down there, was treated well. They had a very, very good youth system. So that was the club that I ended up signing with and playing for as a schoolboy back in England.
Wow, amazing. Did you sort of always know from your early childhood that you wanted to be in the game, like throughout your life as a career? Whether, like, was there ideas for you beyond being a player?
It was always play or be a physical education teacher.
Okay.
I was one of those kids,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It was either going to be play sport or teach and coach sports. So for me, it was if I felt I could play, I was going to go down that path.
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. That makes sense. So you've obviously mentioned the Red Devils a few times today. What was the other than obviously like growing up in the household you did with your dad and like his love of the club? What were some of the early memories you have of like really falling in love with that club? You know what I mean? Because there's obviously like, yeah, we go because my dad takes me or whatever. What's the first thing you remember being like, oh, this is my club now too?
It was the noise. I mean, back in them days, Man United had not won a championship since 1968.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started going in the late 80s, they were a huge club. They were still England's biggest club, but they weren't very successful apart from an FA Cup here or there. And you only saw one game a week on TV. So you didn't get to know the stadiums like you do today with the internet and streaming and the game. So turning up, being in the Stretford end and the noise was just immense. I think we were in there 45 minutes to an hour before the game.
Yeah.
Songs were being sung, all terracing. And so it was just an experience. You know, I was probably 12 or 13 at the time. Wow. That was just mind-blowing. So that was the biggest thing for me, the noise. A lot of people talk about walking into a stadium and seeing the green grass. Man United was like a mud field that day. Old Trafford the field was awful. So I don't have that memory, but I do have the memory of the noise and the smells.
Yeah, not quite a visual, but auditory memory. That's amazing. How did your passion for Manchester United influence your understanding of like the business of football? Because obviously, as a player, you don't get to involve yourself that much in it. Did knowing a club like that became so successful as you grew up like impact your own interest in the business side?
No, I wouldn't say in the early years. No. When I went to university, because I went to Manchester Metropolitan University, and I got to be around the game more and different clubs more, I started to get a better understanding that there is a career in football that's not just playing or coaching. So understanding the importance of ticket sales and merchandise and marketing all came later on. So definitely those early formative years, it was more just about the passion of the club and watching the game itself without really forming a thought path about a career in the sport. Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing to me how much you have probably learned about the game just through it's been in part of your life, your entire life, obviously, but like you've now spent so much time working with a pro club here in the US, and you've spent so much time in England, so dedicated to the game as a young player, and then dedicated to being a fan of such a huge club. You've just had so many different touch points in it, so I'm really, really impressed by that, because like I didn't know anything about this Aston Villa stuff, for example. That's amazing. Do you remember who like when you went to see the game and you heard the noise and all that, do you remember who like was your favorite player in that squad?
Brian Robson.
Robson.
Still to this day, my favorite Manchester United player of all time.
Wow.
England's Captain Marvel. Manchester weren't a top club at the time.
Yeah.
But any big goals, FA Cup semi-finals, FA Cup finals, he was involved in, and also for England. So Brian Robson for me was always my hero. I played centre mid, so he was a centre midfield player. So he was always my hero growing up.
When did he leave Man United?
Man United won the Premiership title in 92, 93 maybe it was, and he got to lift the trophy.
Okay.
And then he left to go to Middlesbrough and became player coach at Middlesbrough.
So that was sort of tail end of his career.
Oh, very end of his career, yeah. He was the first £1 million player to be signed by Manchester United back in the day, and I remember him coming onto the field and signing a contract at halftime, which you didn't do back then. So that was like a big thing. He came onto the field, signed a contract, and that was the first time the kind of crowd got to see him.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Are there any transferable lessons from Man United's successes? And they obviously had those period of time with the class of 92 and like all the trebles and all that stuff. That's obviously like not super achievable for every organization to accomplish something like they did with Sir Alex Ferguson and all that. But is there stuff that you sort of gleaned from that club as a fan that you have been able to sort of influence into the Chicago Fire over the years at all? Whether it's, a sort of passion-based thing or a, club operations kind of thing.
I think the first thing is when as my career evolved at the Fire, I was the first one to start all of our youth programs. So we started, we were the first MLS club to do an academy before the USDA came on board. We had the Fire Juniors Youth System, which we started in 2003.
Yeah.
We had the PDL, which is USL 1 now. We were the first MLS club to do that in 2001. So the idea was to build an infrastructure behind the scenes where you could develop Chicago-based talent, or Chicago-based talent could come to the fore.
Yeah.
And we were way ahead of the game. We were doing this long before any other MLS teams were doing it. So much, in fact, that when teams were coming on board in different areas of the country and we had a youth affiliate program there, we were grandfathered in. So it was looking at the youth system and understanding how the youth system worked in England. And that was definitely something that myself and people like John Dawn, Larry Sunderland, Roland Hahn, all brought to the table as we were building that system. But I also think part of what I saw at Man United, which was very in their glory years, which was the same at the Fire during our good decade, was consistency.
Yeah.
There wasn't much change in staff. There wasn't much change in leadership. There was a good, healthy base of professionals for that first decade at the Fire that brought untold success.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I clearly have spent not quite as much time at the Fire as you have, but I spent a few years there, and I feel like that the word consistency is such an important one when it comes to like building momentum and getting things going, you know what I mean? And that is a little bit of a hint of what I feel these days, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
So you moved to the U.S. in what year?
Moved to the U.S. I came out in 96, but 97 was my first kind of summer in Chicago. I came out to coach.
Yeah.
Came out with Major League Soccer camps, which was then operated by a group called North American Sports Camps.
Okay.
A bunch of Brits all coming over to the States for 12 weeks in the summer, doing some coaching. So moving all around the U.S. and was lucky enough to end up in Chicago in the summer of 97 and promote a new MLS franchise that was about to be launched that fall.
So you were working, you moved here to promote the team?
So no, we moved here just to run soccer camps.
Okay.
But was working for Major League Soccer camps. And at the time, I was based on the East Coast at the start of that summer.
Yeah.
And then 8 to 12 of us came to Chicago to go and drum up interest.
Of course.
In a new franchise that was going to be launched that fall.
Wow. So you, technically speaking, you were working for the club before it even existed.
I actually wish, my actual first year at the club in 1998, I still was an employee. I worked for the camp company. But the camp company, we were in the office every day.
Right.
So we were treated like Chicago Fire employees. We had Chicago Fire business cards, but my salary was definitely being paid by Major League Soccer camps.
Fascinating.
And it wasn't until 99 I picked up my first paycheck from the Chicago Fire Football Club.
Wow. What was your first role at the club?
Ticket sales.
Ticket sales?
Started in ticket sales.
Yeah.
When I moved here full time, it was to start soccer camps and start the youth programs for the Fire. But once I moved here, we found out that the league rules didn't allow us to do that. So it was go back home to tail between the legs or do
Sling
something
some
else.
tickets.
So a lot different then to how it is today.
Yeah.
And I found out I could actually sell the tickets by talking about soccer and then actually going out and coaching soccer to youth soccer clubs. So that was my first foray into corporate life, was selling tickets for the Fire in 99.
I feel like that's a pretty common entry point for folks, right? Yeah. I mean, some of the most valuable lessons I've learned have been through Mike Ernst, who we both know well, and like just such a great dude, and such a dude who is able to really like make you want to do it. He like makes you want to sell the tickets. We at Edgewater Castle are in the process of a new ticket sales campaign as we speak, listener. So see, I'm not very good at this.
Get out and buy.
Yeah, get out and buy.
Get out and buy.
Smash that buy button.
Support your local team.
Support your local team. That's right. If your area code is 60660, 60646, or 60608, I
Oh,
think.
60625, which is where I live.
60625, where
Yeah.
Caddy lives. You need to be a supporter of Edgewater Castle. Obviously, I realize the catch-22 of the fact that if you're listening to this, you're probably already a fan of the team, so good for you. But if you have friends who aren't, get mad at them on my behalf. Thank you. What were some of the biggest challenges that the Chicago Fire faced when you first arrived at the club?
The name.
Okay.
Started the fire department, and our logo, as everybody knows, was very much identical to the fire department. So
Yep.
the name was a bit of a challenge at first. And listen, we were professional, but all in name, right? We trained at Moody Bible Soccer Field, and then we moved to Lake Forest College. We were nomads. We played at Soldier Field. We played at U.S. Open Cup games out in Mount Prospect and Arlington Heights.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, very small staff. And everybody did everything. It was one of them where, yeah, I might have been ticket sales on my business card, but game day I was operations, I was cleaning, I was lifting, moving things around. So the early days were multiple jobs and multiple hats, but it was so much fun.
Yeah.
Really so much fun back then.
What are some of your favorite shareable memories from that time in terms of just, either working there or...
Celebrating with the players.
Yeah.
I mean, after winning in 98, doing the double, and then U.S. Open Cup in 2000, 2003, 2006, but definitely those early years. After every game at Soldier Field, the team used to go and eat in a restaurant in Chicago.
Yeah.
And the fans and staff all used to go with them.
Oh,
so
wow.
the ESPN Zone was a place, California Pizza Kitchen.
Yep.
So after a game, we literally would all go there. And everybody knew everybody. So it was very much a small, kind of tight family, the Chicago Fire back in those days.
Yeah.
And you just love coming to work every day.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really love hearing stories about the sort of like origin stories like that, especially where there is this sense of like, yeah, we're all really grateful that everyone here is here, and we're all gonna like just treat everyone like friends. That's a nice vibe.
That was the culture that was built then. Everybody did everything. It was a really good place to work.
Yeah. I mean, I can relate. I hope this is a good place to work. These guys will be able to tell better than I can. But one thing that I think is really important is that like in anything you do, it really does just take a village to get stuff done. Like you can't have too many people around who are like, yeah, I only really do what I do. And it's like, okay, well, there's just only so much time in the day for the rest of us, so you're going to have to pitch in somewhere. By the way, we're going to do some reno after this, boys. No, I'm just kidding. Can you describe the evolution of the Chicago Fire from your perspective from those early days to where the club is now in like a few sentences? I know it's a huge shift, but there's a big span in there, but how can you sort of describe the change you've seen?
I mean, just overall, where the club is at today, I never thought I'd see the club where it's at today. The leadership coming from the top, Joe Mansueto is probably the best owner in all of sports. Puts the money and the resources behind the club, hires good people. The talent at our club now, both on the business and the sporting side, is insane.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd be in a position where the club has a training center that rivals the Premier League, and it does. I was involved in that project from the beginning, and the pride that I see in that training center, knowing what I've seen back home, is second to none. The vision of now building our own stadium in downtown Chicago. So having an owner that really walks the walk, it's really cool to work for, because he has one vision, and he doesn't want to keep losing money, but his vision is to win.
Yeah.
His vision is to win an MLS Cup, to win the Open Cup, to win whatever competition we're in.
Yeah.
And him being a Chicago/Northwest Indiana guy himself, that passion comes through. So from where we were, where up until this performance center, the Chicago Fire had never owned a grass soccer field.
Yeah.
In 25, 26 years, the club never owned a grass pitch.
Because Bridgeview was City of Bridgeview.
Bridgeview was City of Bridgeview. We trained at Moody Bible. We trained at Lake Forest College before that. So now where we're at today, with 55,000 square foot performance center, the best hybrid fields in North America.
Yeah.
The fields that we have, there's only 8 in this country, and the others are in stadiums. where ours are on the practice field. So
Wow.
just knowing what our club has become, from where we came from,
Yeah.
I never thought we'd get to this point.
Yeah. I mean, it is incredible. I mean, even the last few years, working under you, and then prior to that, working in Bridgeview, and like that span of time felt like 20 years worth of change in like 4 years,
Yeah.
And it really, to see, I went to the game on Saturday, right? And it was not a perfect evening. It was kind of cold. It was got a little rainy. There was rain. Miami's coming next week, right?
Yeah.
But the crowd was solid. It was like big and excited and loud, and there was like genuine positivity in Soldier Field to watch a Fire game. And you know this more than anyone, probably, like Chicago sports fans and Fire fans specifically are a pretty like fickle bunch.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Didn't know
yeah.
that.
Isn't that amazing? But the fact that the sense of positivity is actually present feels so surprising in the way it is now, where obviously, people are like yourself are sort of like, oh, I'm not getting anywhere near, hope just yet. You've been here 25 years, so I understand why. But the point is, like, there's something very, very special to see a night like that where a few years ago, it would not have been that game.
Yeah.
Last season, it wouldn't have been that game.
Yeah.
So, like, having so much arduous work go into the last, 5 or 6 years, where I know from firsthand how much strain and struggle went into revolutionizing this thing and changing everything about it, and making it better in every way. It's really impressive to see so many of these things actually come to fruition. So kudos. Good job getting a lot of that done.
No, not that. There's a whole team there. I mean, the current president, Dave Baldwin's brought some good people in behind the scenes. The talent we have in the front office is the best talent we've ever had.
Yeah.
And now Greg's putting together what he's putting together. Doesn't matter what, I shouldn't say that, but the work that we put in behind the scenes gets lost if the team's not winning on the field.
Right.
The club's done a lot of great things off the field in the past decade, but as a fan, as a supporter, do you care?
Right.
I can say the same thing about Manchester United, and we've all grown up with our sports teams. What happens on the field counts. So if we can start to get that right, this club is ready to be the biggest club in MLS. It really is the sleeping giant.
Yeah.
Get our own stadium built. I think the owner said that's the final piece, and the team wins. This club will be a club to be reckoned with, for sure.
Yeah, watching that game on Saturday, which again, we didn't win, we tied, but when that first goal went in with these new wingers and like this, high attacking press and all this stuff, I was just like, okay, I actually like watching this team.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a very quick break for our sponsor, and we'll be right back with a few more questions to finish this one out, Paul.
Thank you, Swanee.
Thank you. Thank you, folks. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Stone by Stone. I am still your host, Andrew Swanson, and I'm still joined here today by my good friend, Paul Cadwell. Thank you for being here still, Paul.
Anytime.
Okay, so we've been talking about the Chicago Fire. We've been talking about the sort of evolution of the club over the last few years. You've obviously got a really wide breadth of experience of the club at every stage, right? What are, in your mind, like the 3 most important moments after the double for the club? Because that one's a pretty obvious one.
That's obvious, yeah. I think the club in 2003 being close to winning the treble was important. I think, to be honest with you, I think that was probably one of the best teams we've had at the club. Strong club. So I think then for the club, for the Fire, we were the first at a lot of things.
Yeah.
Because we were so good. So going for the treble, seeing how many fans that we took to Los Angeles for that game was insane. I know anyone wants to go back and look at the footage of that game. The Fire took over a huge swath of that stadium.
That's awesome.
And we played San Jose, and they were obviously a lot closer. So I think that to me also was was testament to the fan base, the supporters that we had. Because back then they were trendsetters. The flares, the drums, the trumpets, a lot of the first in MLS to do so. So I think the 2003 season was huge.
Yeah.
I think the firing of Peter Wilt.
Yeah.
Around the 2006 season, got a lot of people in and outside of the club upset.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think that a lot of us were aware of what was happening behind the scenes with ownership, with AEG and those types of things.
Sure.
But Peter had been the architect of the fire since the early days, and every one of us had been hired by him.
Yep.
So I think that was a huge pivotal role for the club. But for me, the biggest impact has been Joe buying the, and I'm not saying that because I currently work for him.
Yeah.
There has been a huge transformation in the resources that are available, the people that we hire. We've now got one of the biggest staffs on both the business and the sporting end in MLS. And I think you can hear people like Tony Meola, Tyler Terrence talk on Apple TV because they work for the club about Joe and the impact he's made on the club. So to me, that's huge because we have an owner that is from Chicago, gets Chicago, and is willing to invest to win. So I think those are three pivotal moments that maybe are three moments I look back on apart from the double.
Yeah.
That were transformational. And, you know, maybe I could take out 2003 and look back at Bridgeview.
Sure.
The soccer-specific stadium.
Yeah.
You look back now and maybe it's like, oh, that stadium could have been a lot more than it currently is.
Yeah.
But I still remember to this day moving in there for the first time to that stadium and walking out at lunch to eat my sandwiches, looking at a football pitch.
Yeah.
Just sitting looking at a football pitch was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So I think probably, you know, taking the playing side of things away,
Sure.
it would be 2000 and moving to Bridgeview, Peter transition out of the club, and then Joe purchasing the club.
Yeah. That's fantastic answers. And I think like there's something really amazing to me about having such positive things to say about an owner. Like that that doesn't always happen, you know.
No.
You don't always get that. And like
look at my current club, Manchester United.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of bad
I could
blood.
sit here for hours going on about that.
I'm sure you could. That'll be another podcast,
Yeah.
maybe next season.
Yeah.
Okay. How has the fan base and supporter culture evolved over the years, and what role do they play in the club's identity? So you spoke to this a little bit already, but like, how has the fan base sort of evolved over the years?
A supporter a supporter culture and a fan base, they're the custodians of the club. Doesn't matter who the owners are, who the players on the pitch are. I grew up in north of England where your fans are the club.
Yeah,
they are whether you like it or not. So, and going from '98, which was primarily a Polish ultra-based supporter culture.
Yep.
Then seeing Section 8 evolve and then Sector Latino coming in. The club has obviously had a very strong historical connection to its supporters. Stand and Deliver by Brandon Kitchens, Tradition on a Passion, which generated from our supporter culture. So the club, I think, has always had that strong connection to its supporters and fan base, but we've lost our way.
Yeah.
The club lost its way for a period of time there. I think, 2015 onwards through to 2024, 25 even, there has been not so much organization, not so much kind of building together, fans and club. But I'm really, really optimistic about where we are today.
Yeah.
I saw some big strides this off-season with the different groups coming together, having a uniform way that they're approaching the section, singing together, not singing over each other. A lot of camaraderie starting to come back. But also, I can't blame the supporters. When the team is not putting a product on the field for you to galvanize around, it becomes tough. And the fact that they still come out is why I've always had so much time and love for the supporter base.
Yeah.
As you know, the last 2 or 3 seasons, I was kind of overseeing that for the club. And it kind of, it breaks your heart to see where we were, where we are, and now, but now there's definitely a positive spin. There's a light coming back over the supporter culture. And the best thing for the club to do is stand and get out of it.
Yep.
The supporters should run their own culture. Supporters should be doing their own thing for a club. But unfortunately, the club had to get involved a bit more than we wanted to
Yeah.
because of some of the fractions within the base.
Yep, absolutely. And it's never easy, right? And I think because supporter culture is so much a part of the identity of a club,
Yeah.
you just can't you can't treat it like any other thing. And that's why it's very difficult, I think, in the US, especially for, a lot of owners and a lot of corporate mindsets to really understand that. But I think you're right that the overall vibes around the supporter culture around the Fire right now are much more positive than they felt in many years.
You know that more than anyone.
I sure do.
You do.
So what are your hopes and aspirations for the future of the Chicago Fire, both on and off the pitch?
On the pitch, it's easy. Every year, you got to be competing for the Open Cup.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to be competing for MLS Championship. So, Eastern Conference champions, Supporter Shield champions. That's your base.
Yep.
If you're doing that year after year after year, things like the CONCACAF and hopefully World Club Championship for the club, those things come over time, but you've got to be every year going out to win silverware. I would take the Open Cup over playoffs every day of the week. You win a trophy, you have a medal, you get a ring. But if you should be doing both.
Yep.
A club of the Chicago Fire stature should not be going as long as we have without winning a trophy and or competing for a trophy. So very simple. On the field, it's win. It's win consistently. Off the field, it's get a new stadium built and fill it. And I'm confident we will.
Yeah.
If we do manage to build our own stadium, then I'm pretty sure every game will be sold out. And that in itself will create a new sense of enthusiasm and energy about the club.
Absolutely. Is there any idea where that stadium's going to go yet?
I don't.
Okay. All right, Paul. So next question. What are some of the biggest challenges still facing the club, even with all this positivity?
Gaining the trust of the soccer community,
Yeah.
the supporter culture, what I call the hardcores.
Yeah.
People who come out and watch Edgewater, maybe I'm coming out and watch the Fire, either because of a perceived lack of connecting to the supporters or to connecting to the city. But to me, in the future, I'd love to see our club, everyone that plays the game, coaches the game, watches the game, wants to come and watch the Chicago Fire play.
Yeah.
So that's connecting with the hardcore, connecting with the soccer playing, the soccer loving culture of the United States. I like to frequent some pubs.
Yep.
And, football pubs, soccer pubs. At this moment in time, I can't give my tickets away.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I need to get to a point where it was like in 2008, 2009, 2010, where people were bugging me and harassing me for tickets.
Yeah.
I think that to me would be a good sign that we're on a very healthy footing, that not just mums and dads and corporate people, that the real soccer culture in this city supports the club.
Yep, absolutely. What is the biggest opportunity that the Chicago Fire has in the next few years?
To tell our story.
Yeah.
We've done so much good work in the community.
Yeah.
Through our foundation, through our community soccer department. I mean, we've built 50 mini pitches. We've got 1,000 kids in our plays program, which is one in SB, but no one knows it. So to tell our story about what we're doing off the pitch, and the differences we make, to me, moving forwards, the key for our club is going to be connecting on the south and west side, so that we're the club of choice, right? There's nothing bugs me more than going down to the lakefront and seeing kids in 15 different jerseys of the Premier League and the Bundesliga.
Yep.
Mexican jerseys.
Yep.
When kids in this city are wearing Chicago Fire t-shirts, Chicago Fire merchandise, and we're the club of choice, that means that we've made a difference.
Yep.
And that we've got people coaching in our youth system and our community clubs that look like the kids that they're coaching.
Yep.
Black and brown coaches speaking multiple language.
Yep.
Football's the world's game. And our club, look at the players. I think the players in our club speak 12 to 15 languages from a dozen countries. That's not the NFL. That's not the NBA. That's not the NHL.
Yep.
So really utilizing what we have to connect with every aspect of the city, to me, is huge. And then tell that story. What we're doing today, what I do today, isn't about next year or 5 years or 10 years. It's about these 7-year-olds when they have kids. Their kids play football, but not just do they play football. The Chicago Fire is their club, not Club America, not Chivas, not Manchester United. So that's the key thing that we need to be focused on.
Yep, absolutely. that giant might not be exclusively an English speaker.
100%.
You know?
100%.
So we're going to get into a few rapid fire questions here.
Yeah.
Best Chicago Fire player ever?
Best or my favorite?
You get two then. Your favorite first, and then
favorite, Chris Armas, CJ Brown.
Yeah.
Together.
Yeah.
No, I can't separate them.
Yeah.
Those two are definitely my favorite players. Best player that we've ever had. I gotta go with Blanco.
Yeah. There's like a few options, but that is, obvious top two.
He made
three.
so much difference.
Yeah.
I mean, so first, a little story.
Yeah,
His first game, I know it's quick fire. His first game was against Celtic in a friendly.
Yeah.
And I was with the Celtic team. And I think Cadwell it was who played for Celtic.
Uh-huh.
He's like, what's all this kind of uproar about this Mexican dude, Blanco? He's past it. He can hardly walk. I've seen some footage of him.
Yeah.
Blanco nutmegged him and scored that game.
Uh-huh.
Afterwards, we went out for drinks and a bite to eat. And I'm like, still think the same about Blanco? And he just started laughing. He's like, man, that guy can't even walk, but put the ball at his feet, and he's a magician.
Yeah.
So Blanco, but there's been so many. You go from Peter Novak, was unbelievable for this club.
Yeah.
Lubos Kubik could open a can of beans with his left foot.
Yeah.
It was so cultured.
Yeah.
There was some real Razov's finishing, DeMarcus Beasley up and down the wing.
Yeah.
Arne Friedrich, for as little time as he was here, Friedrich was one of the most cultured defenders I've ever seen operate.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had some real good players over the years. But I think the most skillful, the guy that I liked watching was Blanco.
Yeah. I've heard Stevie Nickel say similar things about Blanco. Just sort of like, who is this guy? Yeah, very funny. Who's the best youth product that the Fire has produced, in your opinion?
Oh, I mean, I was involved in all of them.
Yeah.
Victor Pineda, the first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Victor was the most talented.
Wow.
For whatever reason, I think the way MLS was set up at the time, Victor's skill set didn't transition to the first team, and I think lost his way a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But Victor's talent level was off the charts.
What year was this?
Victor probably signed. Victor was a 1993, 1994 born. Signed when he was 17. So yeah. 2010.
Okay.
2011, 2011, sometime around. And Mauricio's his younger brother.
Right.
And then we've got the next younger brother coming through too.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good to know.
Very good.
Keep our eyes peeled for that.
Yeah.
If you had to move to one city to watch soccer, where would you move?
That's a great question.
Thank you. You're the first person that said that in response to it.
Buenos Aires.
Ooh, great answer. See, everyone's like London, obviously. And I'm like, well,
no.
Not for this guy. He's a Man U fan. What are you talking about?
No, Buenos Aires, passion.
Absolutely.
I want to go somewhere where you feel the sport.
Yeah.
Where you talk about hearing the sport.
Yeah.
Going and watching a River Plate Boca game is still on the...
Yeah.
Somebody asked me what I would do if I won the lottery.
Yep.
I'd just go around the world watching Clásicos each week.
Yep.
That would be my dream to do. That's exactly what I would do.
You also just gave me my next episode's ending rapid fire question. What you would do if you won the lotto. Well, that's the end of our episode, folks. Paul, thank you so much for being here, man. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Anytime. Next time over a few beers, we might get some different questions.
Maybe. Who knows? We'll shoot from the hip a little more next time. Yeah. It'll be our Footy Pub edition. But thank you again, Paul. Appreciate you very much. And thank you for listening to Stone by Stone, folks. We'll be back next week, and we will talk to you then. Bye-bye. Ahoy there! Thank you for listening to Stone by Stone, an Edgewater Castle podcast. Be sure to listen to our next episode, or better yet, subscribe to our channels on YouTube, where you can find video versions of our episodes, Spotify, Apple Music, or anywhere else you get your podcast fix. We'll have a lot of exciting new content coming up throughout the year, and we want you to stay along for the ride. In fact, you should probably just follow us on all social media platforms also. Just to be safe. And with that, I leave you be. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for supporting the club, listening to the podcast, and as per usual, go Rooks.